Hello everyone, Marcus here, and I'm just going to be doing a quick impressions video of what I thought of Sword Art Online 2, Episode 3, Memories of Blood. This is going to be a little bit loose, so I just watched the episodes a few minutes ago, and I have a couple of notes here for some interesting facts, so if you see me looking at the notes, please bear with it. So, let's get this video started. Overall, my impressions of the video are relatively positive in all honesty. While it wasn't necessarily something like we were expecting, maybe like some badass moments or something that makes you feel awesome, what it did make us feel, I feel, is a lot more important in the broader picture, and it's going to be more key to the overall season success in comparison to maybe the action scenes that we were getting last episode. And the thing is, this episode was mostly about tone. From the very beginning, we aren't getting some bombastic action or some really kick-ass energy. We're kind of treated to a visual of Xenon's reality. Since last episode, we kind of got a hint that she has some issues that she's working out with. And in this episode, I think that they really clearly just straight up said, this is what she's got, this is her issue, and this is what we're going to try to deal with throughout the season. And I think that's the best way they could have approached it. It starts off with Xenon just being in a shopping district that looks kind of like a Kiva to me at the very least, but then again, everything does. But anyhow, she's in a shopping district, and then she's pulled away by some bullies, apparently, that she has from school, who basically introduces to the issue Xenon has in regards to guns, because before they brought up the matter, she was actually showing some pretty decent confidence. She decided she wasn't going to give them money, and, she was basically just about to leave, but until the girl just basically does this kind of pose with her fingers to signify a gun. I mean, everyone does it from when they're a kid, like bang, bang. But basically, we can see that Xenon takes that extremely differently in the real world in comparison to the virtual world. I mean, oftentimes us players in MMOs tend to have different personas, or actually games in general really, tend to have different personas when we're playing games in comparison to when we're in reality. And I feel that this shows us very clearly that Xenon, while a badass virtually, has some things that she has to get taken care of mentally, at the very least, in the real world. She ends up getting saved by her friend Shinkawa Kyoji, as he comes in and says, hey, police, come over here, and that convinces the other girls to leave real quickly, which kind of indicates to us, at the very least, yeah, they're stereotypical bullies or delinquents. But anyhow, afterwards we're treated to a scene where we get to see Shinkawa Kyoji, the friends, thoughts on GGO and how they're going to be doing this, and we kind of get a small discussion on how Xenon relates to this guy. On the one hand, usually in the conversation that we saw, if you're accustomed to anime, you'll pretty quickly note that this would, under normal circumstances, be a scene that has some slight or maybe romantic tensions if this were Kirito. But we note that Xenon doesn't even have a single indication of maybe a blushy or anything like that. Well, we kind of see a few moves on that end by Kyoji, which to us at the very least can indicate that maybe Xenon's a bit oblivious in this regard, and at the same time that Kyoji might be suffering a lack of confidence, really. I mean, his father expects him to be a doctor, he's trying to keep up high grades, and we can see that Kyoji-san has a few issues with the statistical selections he made as a result of likely what happened in the first episode, whereby it stated that AGI specialization characters are completely worthless, essentially. And he's taking it pretty hard. This kind of almost translates to the way Xenon treats him, and that she isn't really regarding him with all that much enthusiasm, since he himself isn't really showing that much enthusiasm for himself. And while he did make an attempt to kind of make a move on her, I don't think it ended up working out as well as he did, and I'm not sure that's going to be helping out his psychology throughout the rest of the season. Anyhow, they quickly go on to another scene whereby we see Xenon at home and alone. The thing with this scene is particularly powerful, since we kind of see what she's been trying to do with VR, and at least. The thing is, Xenon seems to be using this, GGO, as a method of immersion therapy. This is actually a real concept right now, whereby we use virtual reality simulations of things that people are traumatized by, typically PTSD, or maybe even drug addictions, and we use them as a way of treatment in the virtual world to get us to be treated in the real world. Xenon seems to be attempting to do this in VR using GGO, and we get to see her attempt, reminiscent if not her progress at the moment in time, by taking out a model gun to get the backstory behind her trauma. She's holding the gun, and we get to see the flashback whereby a gunman attempts to rob a postal office or something like that, where they're at. And her mother gets knocked to the ground, and she attempts to wrestle the gun out of the guy's hand. She succeeds, and then proceeds to defend herself using the gun, and kills the man, and or assailant if you want to call it, for attempting to harm her and her mother. Anyhow, the issue is she's shown that this event has traumatized her majorly. I mean, initially, she goes to check on her mother's face, and it's like her mother has a mortified expression. I mean, her daughter just saved her life, but her daughter just killed a man, too. And this then proceeds to seeing this pool of blood just steadily seep down onto where she's sitting. And I think that's the moment when things really just kind of like lay into her psychology, and that's just brutally just traumatizes the poor girl. And then we get to transition to see that horror that she has expressed in the moment return in the present scene, where she's basically just having a panic attack as a result of like holding the gun just for a few moments, and she's starting to hallucinate maybe the guy like coming out of the drawer, at which point she basically just can't take it anymore, and we see her just go off to the bathroom and vomit most likely, which really helps us understand her motivations in GGO, and perhaps why she takes it so seriously in comparison to like what we saw in the second episode, where it's like, hey, you're just playing a game. Honestly, this scenes initially kind of were a bit much for me. I mean, I'm not the most queasy guy in the world, but at the same time, just seeing her in that just miserable state was kind of unnerving, and it didn't really make me feel comfortable. Although at the same time, I really do think it helped me treat her more like an independent character in comparison to some of the other scenes we might have seen last season or with any other character in a while. Anyhow, we're then treated to a quick contrast immediately, whereby we go to the bright, colorful world that is ALO, and we get to see Kirito discussing with Asuna the fact that he's going to be transferring games. It's obvious that this is pretty surprising to them, and the fact that he isn't giving all the details kind of shows us that he's probably trying to keep some of this stuff a little bit to himself, and in a way is almost reflective of a bit of his character from last season, whereby he tries to handle things on his own in comparison to maybe asking for help or anything like that. Afterwards, he decides to go to the hospital, and we get to see a little bit of a kind of a mood-lifting scene where we get to see a small ecchi scene whereby the nurse is kind of probing at him rather than him playing around or teasing with another person, which is actually kind of interesting since it's one of the few character traits he actually does show occasionally, whereas mine is its teasing attitude. So it's kind of fun to see him kind of have that thrown right back at him by the nurse. Although at the same time, I don't recall the butt groping being in the last light novels at the very least. Well, at the very least it helped raise the mood in the scene, and I really do think that helped mellow out the last of the incredible gravity that was created by the whole Xenon situation at the beginning of the episode. Which, by the way, that gravity is actually being well used, if I had to say, but I'll get back to that on a later note. After Kirito's basically Link starts right into the GGO thing and goes into there, it's kind of interesting because we then transition to another scene, which kind of feels a little similar to the flashback Kirito was having where he was researching the whole situation, and we kind of see three characters who are likely the people we saw at the beginning of episode 1 discussing the matter, and it appears that somebody is watching this discussion from their computer, which we all can probably infer is likely Deathgun, and the way he's responding to it, I think, gives us a bit of insight on him too, even though we don't necessarily get to see his face, because the way he's like reacting to it shows that the way people are treating or inferring or basically impressioning on Deathgun interests him in a way. Which is kind of like when you hear in the media, like, don't advertise or talk about murderers because they kind of just want that. In a way, it almost kind of feels like they're making a slight commentary on that, because we get to see this guy reacting to their responses in live, and it shows us that he's probably not in the best of mental states. And then he switches up the scene a little bit to show us the three people he's targeted, since we already know he's killed 2 people, and we get to see the third person is Xenon on that list. This kind of brings back up that gravity I mentioned, because that all of a sudden raises the stakes on this whole situation a lot more, because we can clearly see that a character that might not be right in the head is targeting somebody in real life, and this is going to be problematic. So, the overall impression I can make on this is that they're taking advantage of the gravity and using this episode to really take away any of that perception that we might have had before, where it's like, why are you guys taking a video game so seriously? And really taking advantage of all the gravity and sympathy we have to make us take it a little bit more seriously. At the beginning of the episode, we can see that this is almost kind of like a medical treatment for Xenon, since she's having issues with her own past trauma and likely PTSD, and thus we have a bit of sympathy and we can take the situation more seriously. It's like, it's not just a game anymore for her. For her, this is a matter of her own mental well-being. And we take that, kind of alleviate it a little bit with the whole Kirito situation and transitioning, only to take advantage of what's little bit is left to really raise the stakes by making it sure that like she needs this, but at the same time she's at risk because of it. And I feel that overall, even though this episode had a little bit of was a little slow, and I'm really surprised that we're 3 episodes in and they still haven't done the whole gender bender twist that they've shown since the first poster. On its own, this episode has probably been kind of just a mood setter, so it can't really stand up on its own. But at the same time, I feel that in the broader context of things, this is probably going to be one of the more memorable episodes, and is going to grow in terms of its impact on us as time goes on. Well, everyone, that just about covers most of the things. I have a few little details that I wanted to note, although I did get to most of them without having to go through the cards, so it's kind of pointless that I grabbed them anyway. Anyhow, the biggest thing I just wanted to note is the Kirito's little thing in the episode where he has to take off his shirt. That's an EKG, an electrocardiogram. That's used to monitor his heart, and it's likely relating to the fact that the people who died earlier died from having a fatal heart attack, or having their heart stop. So it's likely they're using this to monitor his heart. It's actually a sister technology to the EEG and EMG technology that's probably going to be one of the foundationary pieces for IRL nerve gear for us, or possibly other smaller designs. At the very least, I know I'm going to be using both of those technologies, and possibly even the EKG itself, just to get some more data. Well, everyone, this has been my impressions of the episode, and I really do suggest that you watch it. I watched it on Crunchyroll, and I'm a member, so I get to watch it straight up day in on simulcast. However, if you do want to watch it at the same today, I'd suggest looking into the website Daitsuki, which seems that they'll be showing it on later on today here on YouTube.com. So go check out the videos there. It's split into 2 vids, so you might want to just get that second video ready and loaded while you're doing it, but at the same time, have fun with it. It's been a pretty good episode, and yeah, I enjoyed it. Well, everyone, this has been Marcus Dahl, logging out.